Hey everyone, Mark Meckler here, president of Convention of States with the Sunday Night BattleCry. By the way, that means I'm at home. I love being at home. I don't know if you guys can see. I was going to say the dogs are behind me, but it's just Winston behind me. Doc is now, it's weird calling him a puppy. We should. He's only 5 months old, but he's about 75 pounds at this point. So he's growing like one of those sponge animals that you throw in the water. If he comes in later, we'll see if we can get him in the lap. Doesn't really fit in the lap anymore, but we'll try. So I'm at home and I'm enjoying the dogs. I'm enjoying my kids. I'm enjoying my granddaughter, Lorelei, and of course my wife, Patty. I'm excited to be here with you on the Sunday Night Battle Cry. And I do have a call to action for you this week. It's something that I've already done. If you haven't, I'm going to recommend you do it. If you've done it already, you might want to do it again. I rarely ask you to do the same thing twice, but in this case, it's worth it. And that is go out and watch the president's address of the joint session of Congress. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. I watched it live here at home in my living room, an audience of four if you include the dogs. It was me and Patty and the dogs, and we were all applauding. It was so good. It was so exciting. It was so inspiring. It was so on point. It was so savage sometimes that I found myself applauding and cheering, which is kind of a funny thing to do when you're sitting in your living room and you're not in a big auditorium or attending the speech live, but it was that good. And so if you haven't seen it, it's an hour and 40 minutes. That's a lot of speaking. I recommend you see it. I want to break down a little bit of it for you. And the first thing I want you to note, as I said, it was an hour and 40 minutes. That's a long speech for anybody. That's kind of a Trump speech at a rally. But here's the amazing thing. Trump worked an entire full day at the White House, doing all kinds of meetings, as he does every single day at the White House. And then after a long day at the White House, decided to, mosey on over to Congress and give a barn burner of an hour and 40-minute speech. Now, I don't know how he does that. He's a lot older than me. That takes an incredible amount of energy. He does it like he's a young man. And that night, that speech was no different. In fact, it was one of the most on fire, like animated, on point speeches I've ever heard him give. Probably the best speech I've ever heard him give. And he did a bunch of things in this speech that I think were incredible. Beyond just being there, right, and giving that speech after a full day acting as president in the White House. So I think one of the most interesting things he did was he set the tone for the speech in what I think was a very blunt, very honest, and very important way by going after the Democrats. And the way he went after them was just truthful. And the Democrats just walked into this trap. He said it openly, literally, so they could see it, they could know it was coming, and then they walked into it. Now, no doubt the president knew they were going to pull a bunch of shenanigans, and they did. But what he said is basically, it doesn't matter what I do up here. It doesn't matter if I announce a cure to some horrible disease. It doesn't matter if I gave them each $1 million. They're not going to clap. And he pointed at them. Our friends over there on the Democratic side of the aisle, they're not going to clap. They're not going to stand. They're not going to do anything positive. They won't, no matter how positive this is. And I think he knew what was going to happen, and they weren't going to get excited. They weren't going to stand and clap no matter what. I think there was one Democrat at one spot that was an exception to that, and kudos to her. But let me kind of lay out. So he says this thing, right? And I feel like he just set the table at that point for himself to eat the Democrats' lunch or dinner, as it may be. It was late. It was 9 p.m. Eastern time start. And they just walked right into it. It was just a trap that was laid for them. And so indeed, no matter what he said, they refused to stand. They refused to stand for a 13-year-old boy who has terminal brain cancer, who's had 13 brain surgeries, who was given 5 months to live, who's now lived, I think, 5 years or 8 years. Absolutely incredible story. And then President Trump, the young boy was dressed in a police uniform. He's an honorary police officer, but they made him an honorary Secret Service agent. He was clearly surprised, didn't know it was coming. It was an incredibly touching, nonpartisan moment, right? And the Democrats refused to stand. So the Democrats refused to stand for a boy with cancer. The Democrats refused to stand for Laken Riley's mother and sister, a woman who was mercilessly slaughtered, a young woman, a nursing student, by an illegal immigrant that should have never been in this country that Joe Biden released. The Democrats refused to stand to honor her mother and sister. How low, how incredibly despicable is that? The Democrats refused to stand For young Jocelyn's mother, Jocelyn, again, murdered by an illegal immigrant, the president named a wildlife refuge in her honor there for her mother to see in front of the entire country. The Democrats refused to stand. The Democrats refused to stand for anything. The Democrat, maybe they would stand if he announced we're going to have men beat up women in women's sports. Instead, he talked about the fact that there's only two genders. We're not going to allow men in women's sports, things that the American people stand for. The Democrats refuse to stand for what the American people stand for. And I think this sort of plays into, where are they? I mean, where is the Democrat Party out there in the political ecosystem? By the way, right now, you may be able to see this. Doc is coming in, Winston's sleeping peacefully. Doc is chewing on him. And you can see Doc doesn't look much like a puppy. Doc, come here, buddy. Doc, come here. You want to come say hello? Oh, you're breathing heavy. You're partying out there in the yard. I'm going to see if I can bring Doc up in my lap. This is, oh yeah. It's rough. It's rough. Here we go. Ready? Oh, there we go. That is 75 pounds of 5-month-old Great Dane puppy. Yeah, and we're not going to be able to lift him up like that much longer. All right, Doc, go cause some trouble in the background there, buddy. Anyway, sorry about the interruption, but I thought you guys might want to see Doc because I'm not sure how many more weeks I'll be able to lift him into my lap like that. Anyway, the Democrats are out in the wilderness, and what are they promoting? They're promoting transgender madness. They're promoting the idea that men can be women, women can be men, both can be neither, that you should be able to castrate children without their parents' knowledge, that you should be able to read pornography to them in the schools, that there should be pornography in the schools, though they won't allow that pornography to be read out loud at a school board meeting. So all of this stuff, they're promoting all this wild stuff, and then they can't stand for a kid with cancer. So they're in the wilderness. I don't know what they're going to do about it. Trump did an incredible job, announced a lot of amazing things at that joint session of Congress. If you haven't seen it, I barely scratched the surface. There is so much. You can see I'm smiling. It will make you smile. If you want to smile, watch this speech. I think you're going to love it. So I would just call it the best joint session speech ever. You know, it's huge. It's incredible. You're going to love it. Nobody's ever seen anything like it before, to quote Trump. You really need to watch this speech. It'll give you an idea where the Democrat Party is. There was a release of the Epstein files this week, and just to change subjects, and it was a disaster. The social media influencers got called to the White House. They didn't know what was going on. I know we've talked about that already, but now they say there's a bunch more files in the New York office of the FBI. So here's what I think you should expect. And I think you should expect this cautiously. You should expect nothing. Nothing's going to come of this. They're going to continue to make a big deal out of it, but nothing is going to come of it. And how do I know that with certainty? Because I just want you to be a rational person and think, if you were somebody and you didn't want these files to come out and you knew that the president wanted to release these files, if they even were still there, if they were trying to hide this conspiracy, wouldn't you have gotten rid of those files when you could? Wouldn't you have shredded them? Wouldn't you have destroyed the most incriminating evidence if you've been trying to hide that for years? You have the local prosecutor there in the Southern District of New York, the guy that ran the FBI office there, I should say. He sent an email to his staff when President Trump was elected saying, dig in. Right? Dig in. We're going to have to resist President Trump. And so why would they keep the files there? I think they're gone. I think the same is true about the JFK files. Same is probably true about like Area 51. If they don't want you to know and they have a president that they think is going to tell, why would they keep those files around? So I don't believe there's anything there. I don't think we're going to see anything. I think those files, and I believe they existed, and I believe there was a lot there. I believe they're long gone. I want to switch subjects to something that troubles me greatly, and that is the rising tide of anti-Semitism in America. And I want to speak to this broadly and personally. I just want a total disclosure. Most of you know this, but I want to disclose this. I'm a Jewish Christian. So this has a direct impact on me as a Jew. And something I just want to make sure people understand. I'm a Christian. I've chosen Christ. Christ has chosen me. I have been saved by grace incredibly. But that doesn't make me any less Jewish. I'm Jewish because my family is Jewish. I don't mean that religiously, I mean that ethnically. Both sides of my family just oddly come from Ukraine, from Odessa, Ukraine. And when we did a DNA search, we did one of those years ago. I come back, I'm like 98% Eastern European Jew, probably 5% some or 2% some mongrel, maybe Great Dane. I don't know. But so that's what I come back as. That's my genetics. I'll always be Jewish. So I am a Jewish Christian. Some people call that being a Messianic Jew. I just call it being a Jewish Christian. So when I see this rising tide of anti-Semitism in the world, it's personal. Like they're coming for people like me. It's not just Israel. It's not just particular Jews. There is a massive rising tide of anti-Semitism in the world. And a lot of it's coming out of the Arab world, but we're seeing it, some of it, a strain of it running through the conservative movement. And they are re-elevating a whole bunch of old conspiracy theories and saying a whole bunch of hideous, horrible stuff against Jews broadly writ. Now, when you think about this, they say Jews control the world. Well, why is there so much anti-Semitism if Jews control the world? Why are there no Jews in the Arab world? Why have we been cleansed from the Arab world? If Jews control the world, why is it okay to say anything you want about Jews all across Europe, but you can't say anything about Islam or about Muslims across Europe? Those are hate crimes that are prosecuted in a way that they're never prosecuted when they're against Jews. There is something very dangerous happening in the world. This is a cycle that goes over and over. It's as bad as I've ever seen it in my entire life. I'm about to be 63 years old. My birthday is actually next week. And what I'm seeing is the worst anti-Semitism I've ever seen in my lifetime. And what I'm going to warn you is don't buy into it. This is just an age-old trope that comes back over and over. And this is not healthy for anybody in America, but especially not healthy for conservatives. We've seen this rise on the left. The left is now essentially, as a party, the Democrats in Israel. They are the party of anti-Semitism. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, AOC. These are people who are in Congress who are open anti-Semites. I'm not saying they're just anti-Israel. I'm saying they're open anti-Semites. They've said horrible things. And this is in Congress. It's not on the right yet. It's on the left, but we should resist this. It's ugly out there. And the hosts that are selling it get traffic, and they get the worst kind of traffic. They get the quote unquote alt-right. They get the white supremacists. They get the Nazis, and they get traffic from that. And I'm sure they make money from that. But you and I, we need to be cautious and make sure that we don't buy into that stuff, because it's ugly. It's not beneficial for America, and it's not beneficial for freedom. So just keep your eye out for that stuff, and I just recommend staying away from it personally. So I'm gonna stay on a related subject, which is Gaza and Israel and the United States, and I'm gonna ask a question. What the heck is going on? I don't understand what's going on. There's been this pause. Clearly, Hamas has not lived up to the terms of the truce. They have not. They returned the Bibas family. First, they returned the children who had clearly been murdered with their bare hands. Imagine the barbarity of murdering a kid under one and one that's around 2 years old and squeezing their necks until they died. Imagine that level of barbarity. They celebrated the return of the corpse. And the reason corpses, they returned a female corpse that was not the mother's corpse. And then ultimately did return the mother's corpse, like some big joke. They cheered by the tens of thousands in the streets of Gaza over these coffins, over this beautiful family. Imagine that was your family, right? There was cheering over that. And I want to be really clear. You don't see equivalent cheering in Israel in the streets for killing, for murdering. It doesn't happen. There's no equivocation here. The sides are not equal. One are barbarous terrorists whose entire culture is dedicated to the slaughter of innocent human beings, and the other is a country that would just like to be left alone to live in peace. That's the two sides that we're dealing with. So you take your pick. I know which side I go on. And when I ask what's going on, the question is, Trump said a couple of weeks ago that all hell was going to rain down if all the hostages were not released, all of them immediately. The dead and the alive. We believe there's 49 hostages still left. We believe probably half of them are deceased. It might be a few more than 49. The numbers keep fluctuating as far as I've seen. But they didn't do that. Trump said, or else, and he said all hell would rain, and no hell has rained, as far as I'm aware. So I don't really like that. And I don't really know what's going on. And by the way, the one thing that I thought was notably absent from Trump's joint session speech was any mention of Israel, any mention of Hamas. And I don't know why. And I'm going to say I trust the president on the issue, but I do not trust his envoy. His envoy is a guy by the name of Steve Witkin. And I think Steve, in fact, I know, has long ties to the Arab world through sovereign wealth funds that have invested in his investment funds. And so I just worry where he comes down on this issue. And is he having influence on this issue? You hear Trump saying we're negotiating with Hamas, we're talking to Hamas. Why are they doing that? And first of all, Hamas has no leadership. The entire leadership has been decimated. So I don't know that there's anybody you could talk to that it could actually do anything or guarantee anything. But my real question is, why is he doing that? Because Trump said he was just going to wipe them out. And so that makes me very nervous. I'm going to watch it closely. I do trust Trump, generally speaking. So I'm looking at that thinking, I'm sure he has a plan. Maybe he knows something that I don't know, but I don't love it right now. So I want to be super cautious at how I watch that, how I talk about that. I'm definitely concerned about that. I think that's not great news right now in the way that the U.S. is dealing with Israel and Hamas. Traffic at the border, apprehensions at the border have reached all-time lows, encounters at the border, I should say. My understanding is there's something like 8,000 for the month of February, roughly 8,000 and change. And that compares like 200,000 or 300,000 a month for at the time under Joe Biden. Joe Biden opened our border. Like it's undeniable at this point that Joe Biden intentionally opened our border to criminals, to rapists, to murderers, to gang members. Absolutely intentional. I want you to remember prior to the election and during the election, it was said repeatedly by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that, Republicans block the necessary legislation to close the border. And one of, I think, actually the best line of the speech, Trump said, it's not about a change of laws to secure the border. It appears all we needed was a change of president. Great line. And that is exactly what happened. We got a change of president. We got Tom Homan in as the border czar. Got Kristi Noem as Homeland Security Secretary. And that border slammed shut and people quit coming. There are very few encounters at the border right now. There are very few people coming through. I saw Tom Homan speak this last week. And one of the things he said is very few is not good enough. It needs to be zero. And so I think he's out there. He's doing a great job. I think the administration is doing a great job on the border. I think they're going to continue to do that. And I think you have to remember they did it without legislation and they did it without Democrats. And if Democrats were in power, we would still have hundreds of thousands of illegals crossing the border, illegal aliens who are here to harm Americans. And the Democrats did that to us intentionally. And there's no other, this is not an accident. This is not because they needed legislation. They knew it was going on. They knew that young women like Lake and Riley and like Jocelyn would be killed, and they didn't care. They knew fentanyl was killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, and they didn't care. They knew our country was being overrun, and they didn't care. This is today's Democrat Party, and we've just proved it. President Trump proved it in one day. It's now been 47 days, something like that, 48 days, and the border is closed, and the cartels are hurting. And Trump is, I think, going hunting for the cartels. I think we're going to see this. And he says they're going to be wiped off the face of the map. And I believe that. And that is very good news for America. I have a broader question out of all of this stuff about where the Democratic Party is. We saw them behave like children at the speech at the joint session of Congress. We saw Representative Al Green from Texas act like an imbecile and an insane person, ultimately had to be escorted out of the chamber, ultimately was censured. The Democrats went wild during the censure and behaved incredibly inappropriately. The Democrats at the speech held up these little, I don't even know what you call them, like bingo paddles. And in doing so, created the greatest meme device in the history of the world. Like they all hold up these paddles. They said things like false or Elon steals or stuff like that on the paddles. Well, people on the internet, of course, erase those things on the paddles and put all kinds of stuff on the paddles, making the Democrats look even more foolish than they already are. And by the way, when you're acting that foolish, it's hard to make you look more foolish. But the Democrats have decided to look even more foolish. You've got to watch this video. I just want to know who came up with this idea and who thought it was a good idea. Okay, now you watch those people in that video, and do you think, wow, these are people in Congress who are serious? These are people in Congress with good ideas. These are people in Congress with an intellectual approach to the problems that face the country? Or do you think, what the heck was that? Because that's what I thought. See, because apparently you have to be a video gamer. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't spend a bunch of my productive time sitting playing video games. No offense to those of you who do, but I'm guessing most of you don't. And apparently, this was a play on something from a video game called Street Fighter. And in Street Fighter, you're supposed to choose your fighter at the beginning of a game or the beginning of a round. I don't know. And the fighters drop onto screen and they're in a fighting posture like this, right? And they kind of bounce like those people did as they quote unquote drop into screen. Well, they have 16-year-olds working in their office advising them of what will be a good idea for making videos. I just don't understand this. In my opinion, they look even stupider than they already looked. And that's a really hard bar to cross, like, because their bar on stupidity is super high in the Democrat Party right now. But this made them look even more stupid, which is absolutely incredible. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't recommend watching that video twice. I told you watch the speech twice. Don't watch that video twice. It might kill too many brain cells. But that's where the Democrat Party is at right now. The polling shows, by the way, that their overall favorability rating in the entire country is 21%, about 40% among Democrats. This is the lowest in the history of Quinnipiac polling for the Democrat Party, and they just keep doing the same thing. And I want to say I'm all here for it. Congratulations. I encourage you, keep doing crazy, stupid stuff, and we'll see you at the elections in 2026. I can't keep track. There's so much stuff going on. Personally, I'm going to be in Tallahassee on Tuesday for our surge at the state capitol. Looking forward to meeting the Florida team there, going out and meeting with legislators, talking about all the legislation we're working on. It's a past state, so that means we're working on what we call F3 legislation. So anything that supports federalism, freedom or first principles. There's a lot of stuff that falls in that category. I'm worried about the Tallahassee legislature there. I think they're drifting leftward. The Republican Party is getting squishy. Ron DeSantis having a little bit of trouble with his legislature, so maybe we can help a little bit. Then on Wednesday, I'm headed to Arkansas. I'll be there Wednesday and Thursday, be there for their state surge. This is what I love doing more than anything, getting out in the states, hanging out with the grassroots, where the real workers, the real heroes, the real movers and shakers, the activists in the party. And so I will be coming to a city near you soon. If you're anywhere near Tallahassee, if you're anywhere near the Arkansas state capitol, please go on our website, look up the particulars, join us there. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share it with a friend. This is how we spread the word. This is how we get more people watching. This is how we get more people involved. Again, hit the like button, subscribe, share with a friend. We've got a bunch of new items at shopconventionofstates.com. This is my new favorite. That is the Live Free or Die tumbler. Okay, now I know the focus is probably not great. I love this tumbler. Here's why I love it. I put a different lid on it. It has a handle lid, makes it easy to carry. Stainless steel inside. Yep. Don't be drinking out of those plastic tumblers anymore. You don't need your body full of microplastics. I love stainless steel tumblers. This is a beautiful one. On the back of this one, look at this. Patriot Facts. And you probably can't read all that. It looks like a nutrition label, but it says things like serving size, one active patriot, Article 5, 1,776%. Percent of American values, total patriotism, 100%. Federal term limits, 100%. Fiscal restraints, 100%. Limited federal government, 100%. Total tyranny, 0%. It's really cool, this nutrition label. It says Convention of States supporter, 100% supporter. I love this cup. This is my new favorite cup. So go to shopconventionofstates.com, and that's where you can pick this up. We also got some cool shirts there. You're going to love new shirts coming out. And if you want to help us get President Trump to pay attention to us, and I think that's important, we want his endorsement. I'd love him to post something on Truth Social. Go to conventionofstates.com/Trump and ask the president, sign that letter, ask him to support conventionofstates.com. A couple of questions in the Ask Mark Anything bag here, conventionofstates.com/Ask Mark, if you want to ask me a question. First is Mark Peterson. He said, if COS had a narrower scope to its Article 5 resolution, would that nullify the fears of others about a runaway convention? The answer is no. And why is it a no? Because if somebody's afraid that people get into convention and do whatever they want, it doesn't matter whether you have one leg of, like we have a 3-part application, doesn't matter whether you have 3 parts, 10 parts, 1 part. They believe the delegates are just not going to limit themselves. So whatever they come in to do, they're going to do whatever they want. That's why whether they have 1, 2, 3, 10 parts to an application, if you're worried about the runaway, and you shouldn't be, that's ridiculous. You can look at this up on the resources tab at conventionofstates.com/resources. See all the reasons you can't have a runaway convention. It's the same though, however you get into convention. JBS, do you think DC should become a state? I say no, no, and absolutely double no. We don't want it to be a state. It would just be another liberal state. That being said, I do think it's wrong that a city with as many people in it as DC now has, they don't get to vote in federal elections. They don't have a representative there. That doesn't make any sense to me, that they don't have a vote. And so the way to do that is to make most of DC part of Maryland, right? It came from Maryland in the first place, is my understanding. So give it back to Maryland, create a tiny district right around the Capitol and the main federal buildings that is a separate district, because almost nobody lives right there, and just put all those people back in Maryland. That's where they came from anyway. And it might give Maryland another, maybe it gives them another rep. I don't know. But if it does, so be it. I think those people should be represented. I think that's the solution, not statehood. So that's what I've got for this week. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching.